In today's video, I'm going to show you how to color grade Canon's HDR-PQ footage in DaVinci Resolve Studio. So let's get into it. First off, I have a new timeline here, and I'm going to go into my B-roll tab and select some of the footage that I'm going to color grade. So let's grab a clip right here. Let's grab this clip. Now, actually, before I do that, if you double select a clip, you can find your in points and out points. So I can say, hey, I want my clip to enter here, so I press I. I want it to end here. Clip's not very good. Let's grab another clip. Let's grab this. So I want it to in and out. And then I'm going to drag it onto the timeline. So I for in and O for out if you want to do that. And then I'm going to go into the color tab. Now if you want to do it the easy way, you can just right click and add a LUT to the footage. So I can do Canon log to video and maybe just bring down the gain just a little bit, and you could be done there. Now, this footage kind of looks pretty bland, so I'm going to not do that and start from scratch. So, yep, I have no grades applied. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is go into the Curves tab and bring up my highs and bring down my lows. This is called an S curve. As you can see, it kind of looks like an S. It basically gives us more contrast without using the dedicated contrast wheel. And that kind of gives us more control over how it looks. Next, because this kind of looks pretty flat, I'm going to add some saturation. So in this tab right here, the primary color wheels, I'm just going to bring up the saturation like that. Now that looks pretty good. Now something I'm noticing is in the background, it kind of looks a little bit bluish. So what I'm going to do is I can either bring our color temperature up, but that kind of makes it look orange. Or I can go into the Curves tab again and go into the next tab over, which is hue versus hue. I can select that hue and I can manipulate just that color tone. So I can make it kind of pretty wild, whatever I want it to be. I'm just going to bring it a little bit down, and that looks pretty good. Next, I'm going to go and select the green area right here, and I'm just going to make this green just a little bit greener, less yellow. And then I'm going to go into the next tab over and make the green a little bit more saturated. So basically, the hue versus hue will change the hue of the color, and then the hue versus sat will change the saturation of the color. And there's a bunch of different options here. So there's also a hue versus luminance, and a hue luminance versus sat, sat versus luminance, and sat versus sat. So there's a lot of options here. DaVinci Resolve is a very powerful color grading software. So I'm not going to get into all of what it can do today, but I'm just showing you how I can color grade some footage. So, and then I'm going to go into this primary color wheels again and manipulate the gain just a little bit. So I'm going to bring it over towards the orange just a little bit. Then I'm going to go into the HDR mode and then go for the shadows and just bring the shadows just a little bit more orange as well. We kind of want this to be like a saturated, spring, dreamy kind of look to the footage. So that's what we're going after. I like how this is looking. I think we're just a little bit blowing out this area right here. So what I can do is go back into that, the primary, and just bring our gain down just a tiny bit. What that does is just bring the overall brightness of the image down. So it's a little bit too bright. And that looks pretty good right there. Next, what I'm going to do, now that this clip is done, is going to right click and say grab still. And what that does is grabs the effects that we did to this clip and copies it, so I can paste it on other stills. I can also export that frame if I wanted to, if I wanted to say use a frame in a video for a thumbnail, but I'm not going to. Real quick before we move on to the next clip, here is up here in this little circle with the little sparkles next to it. I can click that, and that is what it looks like before. So that's before, and that's after simple color grade. Now, there's a lot to this color tab, but I'm not going to go into that. You can add more nodes and stuff, but this is just basically as simple as it gets if you want to get your footage looking decent without getting too complicated. So I say that this clip looks pretty good considering the amount of time I spent on it. Okay, now what we're going to do is go into the edit page again and grab another clip. So we can preview here. Yeah, let's do that one. Okay, and I've already used this clip in another video, so that's why there's already a in and out point sent for it. So I've already color graded this footage before, but I'm just doing it again to show you. Okay, so first of all, what we're going to do is right click on the clip that we have and hit apply grade, and that applies the grade from the last clip. So it looks pretty good already. I can see we're still blowing it out just a little bit, so let's bring our gain down just a tiny bit. And I actually say that that looks pretty good. Let's maybe just add a little bit more contrast in the shadows. So let me go back to the main curves tab and just bring that down just a tiny bit to get a little bit more contrast there. Maybe bring our highs just down a tiny bit as well. We want it to pop but not be blown out. So that looks pretty good right there. I'm happy with that. So let's go to the next one. Actually, before we go do that, let's see what it looks like without and with. So pretty good right there for the amount of time we're spending on it. Okay, now let's go grab one more clip. So something a little bit different. Maybe a clip that would need a little bit more work done to it. Let's grab this one. Okay, so this one's pretty dark. So what we're going to try to do is go from where we were working on. Yeah, it's not great. So let's add one more tab. So hit Option S on your keyboard to add another node. So it isn't going to affect the previous node, and we can go back and forth between the nodes. So now let's bring up our shadows as much as we can. Just a little bit like this. And bring up our highlights as well. Like that. And then let's bring up our saturation just a little bit as well. Now it's turning a little purple, so let's bring our gain over a little bit towards the orange, because that's where we want it. This is sunrise, super bright here, but not really everywhere else because the sun is just rising. I think the sun is over on this side. So let's see these shadows are kind of crushed, and this is kind of a little bit too blue. So we can go into the curves again and go into the hue versus hue, and click here and see, now we can adjust the hue of that area. So actually, let's not do that. Let's go into this color warper here, select that color, and just make it a little bit more orange. Now it's kind of messing with this. So what we could do, if we wanted to, is create a mask for just this area. But I think what we're going to do is just kind of expand upon it a little. Oh, that looks pretty bad. Let me undo all of that and just grab a couple of these. Just a tiny amount. Like, that looks pretty good right there. Let's grab the next one. And maybe the next one. Bring it down just a little bit. Now what we don't want is our footage to just look weird. So let's zoom in a little bit. See, this looks good, but this doesn't now. So let's bring the next one over here just a little bit. Bring that one as well. Command to select two. Bring them over. Okay, so we can just delete this node right there and see how it looks without it, and then we can add the node back again. So it kind of gives it more brightness and also makes this a little bit more orange. So that's without and with. So I like it with. So there's a lot more that I could do to these clips to make them look even better, but I would be happy with this if I needed to put it in a video and didn't have a lot of time. And I think if you're just getting started color grading, I think you would probably be happy with this as well. So it looks pretty good. Now, I usually prefer to use footage shot on my Blackmagic Pocket 6K because it gives me a lot more range to work with when color grading, and because it's raw, I can control some of the more controls that would be normally in the camera, for example, ISO, black level, and stuff like that from the camera settings itself. But this codec on the Canon R7 of HDR-PQ or Canon Log 3 does give a lot more flexibility when grading. I personally prefer the HDR-PQ setting because I think it gives me the most dynamic range. And I did a video test on that earlier if you want to check that out. But you can see here in this clip, instead of it just being the normal H.265 footage, see here it's H.265, 422, 10, L1.5. So it has more color depth to it and it's easier to work with that way because it's 422 sampling. Well, I think that concludes today's video. If you have any questions about this software or any of the gear I use, please leave it in the comments below and I will answer your question. If you want to become a Patreon supporter, there's a link in the description below to that as well. Anyway, that's it for this video and I'll see you in the next one.